GamingBolt presents 15 greatest Metal Gear Solid moments you need to watch before you die. Metal Gear Solid is a legendary franchise, and each game is packed with emblematic characters, cutscenes, and gameplay features. But did you ever wonder, what are the most iconic moments throughout the franchise? This was a difficult list to put together, and not everyone's going to agree, but that just shows you how great the Metal Gear franchise is. Please note that there may be spoilers ahead. Metal Gear Solid 3: The Death of the Boss. We begin with the most obvious choice. The boss is one of the greatest characters in gaming, and a mother figure to Big Boss, then known as Naked Snake. You fight her and you leave her on the ground dying in a field of white flowers. She gives you her gun and asks you to finish your mission. Then the cutscene ends, and it's not Snake that has to kill her, it's you. So you pull the trigger, and all of a sudden, the flowers turn red. Metal Gear Solid 3: The Twist Ending. After killing the boss and returning home, Eva leaves Big Boss a tape. On the tape, Eva tells you the truth about the boss's mission. It turns out the boss was on her own mission for the US. She didn't defect to the Soviet Union as you were told. Finally, Big Boss has his answers, and he visits the boss's grave, desperately trying to hold back tears. Metal Gear Solid 1: Psycho Mantis Boss Fight. The boss fight against Psycho Mantis might be one of the best in the series if it weren't for a couple of others on this list. Still, it's a legendary moment even outside of the series. The way Mantis screws with your head by reading your memory card, shaking your controller, and forcing you to switch controller ports. Then he takes control of Meryl and forces you to knock her out or you face being killed by her. Metal Gear Solid 1: The Death of Sniper Wolf. The bosses in Metal Gear Solid 1 were all portrayed to you as villains, but once you started fighting them, you realized most of them were sympathetic. Sniper Wolf is a great example. She was a child soldier, constantly fighting and trying to survive in a war zone, knew only wolves as friends, and fell in love with your scientist buddy Otacon. When the time comes to finish her off, Otacon is crying at her side. Snake pulls the trigger, then wraps her handkerchief around her face. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Big Boss speaking to the Pentagon. After defeating the Peace Walker, the giant walking battle tank entered failsafe mode. It was going to launch nuclear weapons at the United States, but as part of Coldman's plan, Peace Walker was designed to make it look like the nukes were coming from the Soviet Union. Big Boss decided to call the Pentagon himself and explain the situation. But first, they wanted proof, and Big Boss gave it to them by mentioning the ending scene of Metal Gear Solid 3. The situation looked like it cooled down, but then someone in the Pentagon pulled a gun on the man speaking to Big Boss and declared they were going to launch the nukes anyway. Metal Gear Solid 4: The Final Fight with Liquid. The last fight against Liquid Ocelot in Metal Gear Solid 4 represents the end of the Metal Gear Solid timeline. The Patriots were destroyed, but Snake and Liquid had one last score to settle. As the fight progressed, the game played music from previous Metal Gear Solid games, and even used the life bar graphics from old games. It was a great send-off for the franchise, and a great ending for both Snake and Liquid. Metal Gear Solid 4: Big Boss makes amends with Solid Snake. Fake shock horror, it turns out Big Boss was still alive at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4. During the final cutscene, Big Boss makes an appearance in a graveyard where Solid Snake was having his own Metal Gear Solid 3 moment. The two sort of fight at first, but Big Boss makes it clear he has no ill will towards Snake, not anymore. Big Boss kills Zero and Snake gives him a cigar. Then, next to the boss's gravestone, he dies for a third time in the series, this time for good. Metal Gear Solid 5: Venom, Snake, and Kaz get revenge on Skullface. After finally taking down Sahelanthropus, Venom, Snake, and Kaz come face to face with a badly injured Skullface. After everything he put them through, destroying their base and killing their men, the two men take their revenge. They grab Skullface's shotgun, and together unload round after round into Skullface's arms and legs. Then they walk away, leaving Skullface still alive, to writhe in pain and agony only to be shot by Huey. Metal Gear Solid 4: Raiden vs. Vamp. Raiden and Vamp first fought in Metal Gear Solid 2, but they finished their hostilities in Metal Gear Solid 4. Raiden has changed drastically, now a cold, immortal ninja much like Gray Fox. Early on in Metal Gear Solid 4, they meet each other again in battle, now surrounded by mini Metal Gears. It's almost like watching a bizarre, bloody dance scene as Vamp throws knives, Raiden dodges attacks from everywhere, and then finally stabs himself when Vamp comes up behind him. Metal Gear Solid 2: Death of Emma. The death of Otacon's sister in Metal Gear Solid 2 is often overlooked, but it's one of the more powerful scenes in the series. Otacon always loses someone close to him, and no one was closer than his sister, who was his only real friend for a long time. He feels guilty for dragging her into the situation, and breaks down completely after her heroic death. But hey, at least we get a pretty epic brofist between him and Snake afterward. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Mirror Scene. This is the most controversial scene in Metal Gear history, and I can't say I'm a fan of it myself. Your character in Metal Gear Solid 5 looks into the mirror and sees the character you created at the start of the game. It turns out you're not Big Boss, but some random guy who was given surgery and brainwashing to make you think you were him. However, this is an incredible scene from the outside looking in. It's Kojima's last scene, his last act on a Metal Gear game, and seems to symbolize that he's no longer the one in control of the series, but someone else. Metal Gear Solid 5: Shining Lights. "We'll make diamonds from their ashes," says Venom. He's mourning the death of his comrades, going so far as to spread their ashes on his face. He doesn't want to see them scattered into the ocean. Instead, he wants to make diamonds from their ashes. He tells Kaz this, and assures him that their fallen comrades will be shining lights, even in death. It's a powerful scene, seeing Venom Snake, who was always close to his men, almost become one with them. Metal Gear Solid 1: Solid Snake on Big Boss. This has to be some of the best voice acting in the entire series. Solid Snake reveals to Naomi Hunter about his past, about how he killed his own father, Big Boss, with his own hands. David Hayter's voice acting in this scene is simply through the roof, as he brings the best of Solid Snake's emotion and the trauma he went through after the original Metal Gear 2. Metal Gear Solid 4: The Microwave Emitting Corridor. Near the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, Snake has to crawl through a hallway full of microwaves to finally shut down the Patriots' AI. Meryl and Johnny are stalling guards outside, and Raiden missing half his limbs, trying to get you time. Everyone is counting on you, and as the player, you have to repeatedly tap the button to move an old, dying Solid Snake through this corridor so he can finally complete his mission and save the world. Metal Gear Solid 5: Escaping the Hospital. The escape scene at the start of Metal Gear Solid 5 is a trippy nightmare. It's like a horror game, as shadowy forces assault the hospital with the sole aim of killing you. You can't walk for most of it, instead crawling on your belly as a mysterious man guides you around. An elevator explodes as a fiery demon approaches you, a woman tries to assassinate you but is set on fire, then you're hiding under beds as everyone else in the hospital is shot and killed. It's as exciting as it is horrifying.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.